congratulations, first of all, of achieving like 10,000 podcast listeners in, I think it was just 30 days, according
Yeah,
to your LinkedIn
we actually got that round number in the 30 days, so we could talk about it.
And I guess, what would you attribute like this incredible early growth to? I mean, I'm sure there's lots of aspects, but could you just give us like a few of those highlights?
There's a few of them. So I think, the great team that worked on the podcast, both internally, and we also worked with an agency, with Sweetfish Media. But the internal marketing team at Landbot had a very big role on the podcast, and the amazing guests that we had in that first month was probably the main factors. But then there are a few, I think, good decisions that we made that were not necessarily on the launch podcast playbook that I can talk about. So we invited Rand Fishkin and Chris Walker like months before we were ready to record the podcast, and we didn't even have a name. And we wanted to start really on that high note and set the benchmark there. So there was no ramp up to those guests. We really started very high, and they were very kind to accept. Then we decided to do this brand called Ungated Marketing and move completely away from the Landbot brand and make it about the content and the promise of discussing marketing tactics and experiments with people that are innovating in marketing. It's completely separate from the Landbot brand that is a chatbot builder. So visually we created a new brand and we betted a lot on that, and I think it paid off. And then in terms of promotion, we decided to do 3 short videos, like those typical micro videos for social media. For every episode, we decided to make 3. We were advised to make 1, but we really wanted to maximize the opportunities to get some hits on social media, to get some posts taking off by sharing on our official channels, but also our personal profiles, the profiles of the guests. So having those extra videos, I think, helped also a lot, especially the ones that Rand Fishkin shared on the first episode got really a lot of traction. There was some conscious choices that I think helped. Also, we decided to publish on our blog an article for each episode, but not just a transcript or show notes, but really write someone else writing an article about the content of the podcast. So we kind of get all the guests of the podcast as a kind of guest authors on our blog, because we write an article more structured, based on what they shared. So we really put a lot of thought into all of this.
Amazing. And just, I wanted to ask, like, why you went, because I'm just interested to know this. So why did you decide to use an agency, and what role did they play in the podcast? Like, I'm just looking at their website now. It's quite interesting, like, kind of approach they've got. Quite straightforward.
So thing, I think the secret with the agency was really, they have their offering and it's very specific and it's for B2B tech companies, and they have their way of looking at podcasting, and we really choose the things we like, and we didn't use the ones that we think that are not a fit for us. They are all good, but maybe a fit for other objectives. So they focus a lot, for example, on account-based marketing, like podcasting as a way to get in contact with our target accounts, which maybe at one of my previous companies would be a perfect playbook for us. But here we really wanted to build an audience. So we still needed someone to do all the technical aspects, all the audio engineers, all the tasks that you need to do to have an episode going out every week. So there's a lot of time consuming work there. We didn't really have anyone in-house to do this. So we definitely needed a podcasting agency. And we choose the one in the B2B marketing space because I know their content. I know what they shared on LinkedIn, and I like what they do. But then we were really selective in saying, actually, these parts of your playbook are not really for us. This is not how we want to go. We want to build an audience. We want to have reach. We want a good number of downloads, not just to build those connections with the guests, which is also great. And so we really picked the design. We did it ourselves as well internally, even though they have designers. So we picked the parts of their offering that suited us, and we did the rest ourselves.
Amazing. That's interesting. I think it's a good place for people to start, maybe to go and have a look at them. Sweetfish Media, if you're interested in 2022 building out a podcast strategy and not sure where to start, because actually from a pricing perspective, it seems pretty affordable as well. So that's really interesting. And then you spoke about this when you answered the first question in terms of what worked with your podcast. But I wanted to touch on it a bit more. So you mentioned that you actually branded the podcast separately to the brand that you have as Landbot. So why did you decide to call it Ungated Marketing? How did you come up with that and validate it as something that would have traction? And what was the thought process around that?
So we had a framework that actually Sweetfish Media shares. And that's one of the points where we broke the framework. And it was more of a gut feeling and doing it ourselves. because most of the framework says, think of your target persona, think of an objective that you want to identify with. So if we would follow that, we would have done the Innovative Marketer podcast, for example, something like this. And we decided to break away a little bit from that. Not that that wouldn't work, but we wanted something that can evolve into a brand that is more than a podcast. And this is part of our maybe bigger playbook. It can be a virtual event, a physical event, it can be a website, a newsletter. So Ungated or Ungated marketing can be bigger than that. And I was not really seeing like the Innovative Marketer conference happening. I think the Ungated Marketing Conference sounds much better, or even just Ungated if you want to broaden a little bit more into customer experience and more than marketing. And the reason for Ungated itself, it's, I think there's a double meaning there that we really identified with what we wanted to do with Landbot. So there's the Ungated, the gated marketing playbook that we want to break away from. So that's some provocation there. And there's also the Ungated in the sense of the marketer himself to feel that he is opening or breaking some gates, like we call the title of your episode, breaking the gates. So for the marketer himself that wants to be more creative, that doesn't want to be restricted to follow a playbook that has been around for years, also to engage this for himself. So we really like the sound of it. I mean, once it popped in our head, it just stick there, and we decided to go with it.
I love that. I think the takeaway there is like actually it's a brand, the idea of creating a brand that can be standalone outside of and synonymous with Lambot, but outside of just like, yeah, your wider product offering, etc. And I think that's, yeah, really interesting way of looking at it.